I'm Ava, 32 years old, and I never thought I'd be slapped across the face at my own sister's wedding. Standing there in my maid of honor dress, my cheeks stinging from my mother's hand, all because I refused to give away my penthouse as a wedding gift. The shocked faces of 200 guests witnessed my humiliation, but none of them saw what came next. That slap awakened something in me I never knew existed. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. If you've ever had to stand up to family members who felt entitled to your success, hit that like button and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how I turned this painful moment into the ultimate lesson my family never expected. Growing up in the suburbs of Chicago, I always knew my place in our family hierarchy. I was the reliable one, the smart one, the one who was expected to achieve. My sister Natalie, 4 years younger than me, was the golden child. Our parents made no effort to hide their favoritism. Where I had a structured schedule of studying and responsibilities, Natalie was free to pursue whatever caught her interest. My childhood memories are filled with evidence of this imbalance. When I was 12, I needed new glasses after my prescription changed. My mother sighed about the expense and chose the cheapest frames available. 2 months later, Natalie wanted contact lenses because glasses weren't cool. She got them immediately, along with 5 pairs of coloured contacts for fun. For my 16th birthday, I received SAT prep books. For Natalie's sweet 16, our parents threw a party at an upscale hotel with a professional DJ and catering. My parents claimed they couldn't afford such luxuries when I was that age, but somehow found the money for Natalie. I worked hard in school, joining academic clubs and maintaining a perfect GPA. I still remember the sting of looking out at empty seats during my debate team championships, knowing my parents had chosen to attend Natalie's minor role in the school play instead. When I won state-level science competitions, my achievements were acknowledged with a cursory, "That's nice, honey," before the conversation returned to Natalie's latest modelling photo shoot. My college years brought more of the same pattern. I earned a full scholarship to Northwestern University, double majoring in computer science and business. Instead of pride, my parents seemed almost disappointed that they wouldn't need to help financially, immediately redirecting those funds to Natalie's pursuits. While I worked part-time jobs to cover my living expenses, Natalie received funding for modeling portfolios, designer clothes, and trips to fashion events in New York and Miami. During those years, I often sent money home when my parents hinted at financial struggles. I later discovered those struggles mysteriously coincided with Natalie's desire for new opportunities. By my junior year, I was not only supporting myself, but also contributing to household expenses. My parents presented this as my duty as the successful one in the family. After graduation, I joined a tech startup focused on financial technology. The timing was perfect, and the company grew exponentially. I worked 80-hour weeks, skipped vacations, and poured everything into my career. When the company went public, my stock options became worth millions. I lived frugally, despite my growing wealth, investing wisely and saving aggressively. At 30, I finally allowed myself one significant indulgence, a stunning penthouse overlooking Lake Michigan. The 3-bedroom space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a private rooftop terrace represented everything I had worked for. Every morning, watching the sunrise over the lake from my bedroom, I felt a sense of accomplishment and peace I'd never known growing up. Meanwhile, Natalie had bounced between jobs, apartments, and relationships. She worked at fashion boutiques, tried interior design, started and abandoned a lifestyle blog, all while living in apartments our parents subsidized. Her modeling career never quite took off beyond local catalogs and websites. Despite this, my parents constantly praised her artistic spirit and versatility. My success was treated as expected, almost mundane, while Natalie's smallest achievements were celebrated extravagantly. When I closed major deals at work, my parents would listen politely for a minute before changing the subject to Natalie's latest venture. The pattern was so established that I stopped sharing my accomplishments altogether. I dated occasionally, but remained focused on my career and personal growth. Natalie, meanwhile, had a series of whirlwind romances that my parents followed with rapt attention. They would call me with detailed updates about her relationships, while rarely asking about my own life. Despite everything, I maintained a relationship with my family. I told myself that family was family, and their behavior was simply how they were wired. I accepted the imbalance as normal, believing that my achievements were their own reward. Looking back, I can see how deeply I had internalized the idea that I was less deserving of attention and affection than my sister. All of these dynamics would come to a head in ways I never anticipated when Natalie met Robert Williams, the son of a prominent Chicago family with connections in real estate development. Their relationship moved quickly, and within 6 months they were engaged. What followed would change my relationship with my family forever. A show. When Natalie announced her engagement to Robert, our mother immediately transformed into wedding planner extraordinaire. What started as discussions about a nice celebration quickly escalated into plans for an event that could have graced the pages of luxury bridal magazines. The venue was changed 3 times, each more expensive than the last. The original guest list of 100 doubled to accommodate Robert's large extended family and my parents' desire to impress their social circle. The wedding dress budget tripled after Natalie found a designer gown she couldn't live without. Every detail became an opportunity to upgrade from hand-calligraphed invitations to imported flowers that had to be flown in from Holland. I watched with growing concern as my parents enthusiastically committed to costs I knew they couldn't afford. When I gently suggested scaling back certain elements, my mother looked offended. "We want the best for your sister. It's the most important day of her life." 2 months into planning, I received a call from my father. His voice had that particular tone I recognized from childhood, the one that preceded requests for money. "Ava, honey, we're so excited about the wedding plans, but we've hit a bit of a snag with the deposits." This snag turned out to be a $20,000 shortfall for initial vendor payments. I transferred the money that day, telling myself it was a one-time thing to help my parents avoid debt. It wasn't. Over the following weeks, the snags continued. $5,000 for the photographer they simply had to have. $8,000 for the band Natalie fell in love with. $3,000 for welcome bags for out-of-town guests. Each time the request came with assurances that this was the last time they'd need help. Meanwhile, I was asked to be Natalie's maid of honor. The role felt more like an obligation than an honor, especially when Natalie handed me a list of responsibilities that included organizing a destination bachelorette party in Miami for 12 people. "Make sure we get VIP treatment everywhere," she instructed, as if I were her personal concierge rather than her sister. I paid for the entire bachelorette weekend, including accommodations at a luxury hotel, a chartered yacht day, and dinners at exclusive restaurants. The total came to nearly $20,000, but Natalie's only comment was that her friend's bachelorette in Vegas had included backstage passes to see Beyoncé. As the wedding approached, my parents suggested I host the rehearsal dinner at my penthouse. I declined, explaining that my home couldn't comfortably accommodate 60 people. Instead, I offered to pay for the rehearsal dinner at an upscale restaurant. The $15,000 bill seemed to barely register with my family. Natalie inspected the private dining room I had reserved and frowned. "This is the bare minimum you could do, considering how successful you are. Some sister is paying for her sister's entire wedding." I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this would all be over soon. But then the comments about my penthouse began. It started with my mother remarking, "It's such a shame all that space is wasted on just one person." Then came observations about how perfect the master bedroom would be for a nursery when Natalie and Robert had children. My father mentioned repeatedly how convenient my location would be for Robert's commute to his family's office. 2 weeks before the wedding, my mother asked if she and Natalie could see my penthouse again. "We just want to get some decorating ideas," she explained. I reluctantly agreed, wanting to keep the peace during the stressful wedding preparations. The visit quickly took an uncomfortable turn. Rather than simply admiring the space, they began measuring rooms and discussing where furniture could be placed. Natalie took photos of every room, closet, and storage area. When she opened my bedroom closet and began examining the dimensions, I finally spoke up. "What exactly are you doing?" I asked. "Just getting ideas," my mother replied smoothly. "This closet would be perfect for Robert's suits." "Why would Robert's suits be in my closet?" I asked, confusion giving way to an uneasy feeling. "Oh, just thinking out loud," my mother said with a laugh that didn't reach her eyes. The night before the wedding, after the rehearsal dinner, my mother pulled me aside. "Ava, darling, we're so grateful for everything you've contributed. But I was thinking, wouldn't it be wonderful if you made a grand gesture tomorrow? Something that would really show your love for your sister." Assuming she meant an additional financial contribution, I offered another $10,000 toward honeymoon expenses. My mother's smile dimmed and she patted my hand in a way that felt patronizing. "That's very practical of you," she said. But I was thinking of something more meaningful, something that would really secure Natalie and Robert's future. Before I could ask for clarification, we were interrupted by the wedding planner with questions about tomorrow's timeline. The conversation ended there, but the seed of unease had been planted. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was expected of me beyond what I had already given. Looking back, I should have seen what was coming. All the signs were there, from the measuring of my rooms to the comments about space and location. But I had spent a lifetime dismissing my own instincts when it came to my family, and this time would be no different. At least not until the reception. The wedding day arrived with picture-perfect weather and military-grade scheduling. As maid of honor, I was up at 5 a.m, coordinating with vendors, managing last-minute crises, and ensuring Natalie had everything she needed. The ceremony was held at Chicago's historic Fourth Presbyterian Church, with 8 bridesmaids in blush pink gowns and flower arrangements that must have decimated the Dutch economy. Natalie looked stunning in her custom gown, with its 10-foot train and cathedral veil. As I stood beside her at the altar, I felt a genuine moment of happiness for my sister, despite all the tension of the past months. The reception was held at the Peninsula Hotel in a ballroom transformed into a romantic garden oasis. Crystal chandeliers hung from ceilings draped with white fabric and twinkling lights. Each table featured towering centerpieces of orchids and roses, with gold-rimmed chargers and personalized menus at every place setting. I performed all my maid of honor duties flawlessly. I touched up Natalie's makeup before photos held her bouquet during the ceremony, adjusted her train countless times, and delivered a heartfelt toast that managed to be both funny and sentimental. If anyone noticed the strain behind my smile, they didn't mention it. The dinner service was impeccable, featuring a 5-course meal with wine pairings for each course. As dessert was being served, my mother, who had consumed several glasses of champagne, clinked her glass and stood up. The room quieted as she began to speak. "We are so blessed to have all of you here celebrating Natalie and Robert's special day," she began, her voice carrying across the ballroom. "Family means everything to us, and today our family has grown in the most beautiful way." She continued with typical mother-of-the-bride sentiments, thanking the guests for coming and complimenting the bride and groom. Then her focus shifted. "I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge my oldest daughter, Ava," she said, turning toward me with a smile that sent warning signals through my body. "Ava has always been our family's success story. While Natalie pursued her passions, Ava built an impressive career in technology. She's been incredibly fortunate." The emphasis on fortunate made me cringe. My success had nothing to do with luck and everything to do with years of hard work and sacrifice, much of which had financially benefited my family. And today, my mother continued, her voice rising with excitement, "Ava has the most wonderful surprise for her sister and new brother-in-law, a gift that demonstrates the true meaning of family and sisterly love." My stomach dropped as 200 pairs of eyes turned toward me expectantly. I had no idea what she was talking about. Ava will be signing over her beautiful penthouse to Natalie and Robert as a wedding gift, a perfect start to their married life. The room erupted in gasps and scattered applause. Natalie clapped her hands together in delight, while Robert looked uncomfortable but managed a smile. I sat frozen, unable to process what was happening. My mother had just publicly announced I was giving away my home, worth millions of dollars, without ever discussing it with me. In that moment, everything slowed down. I could see the satisfied smile on my mother's face, the expectant joy on Natalie's, the curious stares from the guests. The weight of expectation pressed down on me from all sides. I stood slowly, my legs unsteady. The microphone was passed to me, and I took it with a hand that I forced not to tremble. "Thank you for those kind words, Mom." I began, my voice surprisingly steady. "But I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. This is the first I'm hearing about giving away my home." My mother's smile faltered. She stepped closer to me, whispering harshly, "Don't be difficult, Ava. We discussed this. It's the right thing to do." "No, we didn't discuss this," I replied, no longer whispering. "I've contributed nearly $80,000 to this wedding. I've been generous and supportive, but my home is not a wedding gift." The room had fallen into uncomfortable silence. Natalie's face crumpled into a pout I recognized from childhood, the prelude to tears that always got her what she wanted. "But we already told Robert's parents," she whined. "We showed them pictures. They're so excited for us. You showed them pictures of my home and told them it would be yours," I asked incredulously, the pieces finally falling into place. The measuring the photographs, the comments about closet space and commute times. It hadn't been idle conversation, it had been planning. "You can buy another place," my mother interjected, her voice rising. "You're single, you don't need all that space. Your sister is starting a family." "That's not your decision to make," I replied firmly. I worked for years to afford that penthouse. I lived in a studio apartment and worked 80-hour weeks while you were funding Natalie's modelling career and paying her rent. I earned that home. My mother's face contorted with anger. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us by embarrassing your sister at her wedding. What exactly have you done for me? I asked the question that had lingered unspoken for decades, finally finding voice. I've been financially supporting this family since college. I paid for half of this wedding. I've been giving and giving while getting nothing in return. The tension in the room was palpable. Guests shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Robert's parents exchanged concerned glances. The photographer, sensing drama, continued snapping photos. "You selfish, ungrateful girl," my mother hissed, and before I could react, her hand flew across my face in a stinging slap that echoed through the silent ballroom. I stood there, hand to my cheek, shock radiating through my body. In 32 years, my mother had never struck me. The photographer's camera clicked rapidly, capturing my wide-eyed disbelief and the red mark blooming on my skin. Natalie began to cry loudly, the familiar sound that had always brought our parents running to her side. "You've ruined my wedding," she sobbed as Robert awkwardly put his arm around her. I looked around the room at the shocked faces of the guests, at my father's embarrassed expression, at my mother's righteous anger, and something inside me broke. Not in the way fragile things break, but in the way restraints break when stretched beyond their limit. Without another word, I placed the microphone on the table, picked up my clutch, and walked out of the ballroom with as much dignity as I could muster. As the doors closed behind me, I heard the murmur of conversations resuming the collective processing of what they had just witnessed. In the taxi home, I held my still-burning cheek and made a decision. This would be the last time my family took advantage of me, and they would learn that lesson in a way they never expected. I spent that night alone in my penthouse, the home I had nearly lost without my knowledge or consent. Sleep eluded me as I replayed the events of the wedding in my mind. The public humiliation, the stinging slap, the entitled expectation that I would simply hand over the keys to my life's achievement. Memories from childhood surfaced with new clarity. The Christmas I received practical clothing while Natalie got an expensive dollhouse. The time I won a National Merit Scholarship and my parents used the celebration dinner to announce Natalie had been selected for a local fashion show. The countless moments when my needs were secondary, my achievements minimized my contributions expected rather than appreciated. Around 3 a.m, my phone began buzzing with messages. Relatives and friends who had witnessed the scene at the reception were reaching out, some with support, others with criticism. "How could you embarrass your sister like that on her special day?" wrote my cousin Rachel. "Are you okay? That was totally inappropriate of your mum," texted my college roommate. "Your poor sister was crying for hours after you left," messaged an aunt. "Call me if you need to talk. What happened wasn't right," wrote my colleague Maya, one of the few friends I had invited. I silenced my phone, unable to engage with any of them. The mix of support and blame was overwhelming, each message reopening the wound of the public confrontation. At 7 the next morning, my father called. I almost didn't answer, but some lingering sense of duty made me pick up. "Ava," he began without preamble, "you need to make this right." No hello, no asking how I was doing after being slapped in front of 200 people. "Make what right, Dad?" I asked, my voice hoarse from crying. "The fact that you and Mum tried to give away my home without my consent, or the fact that Mum physically assaulted me at a formal event?" He sighed, the sound of a man inconvenienced rather than remorseful. "Your mother was emotional. It was a misunderstanding. For the sake of family peace, you need to apologize to your sister and mother." "Apologize," I repeated, disbelief making my voice rise. "For what exactly?" "For not giving away my multi-million-dollar property as a surprise wedding gift." "Don't be dramatic, Ava. No one expected you to just give it away. We thought you might let them live there while they look for a place, or maybe sell it to them at a family discount." The casual entitlement in his voice was stunning. "That's not what Mum announced to hundreds of people, Dad. And even if it was, why wasn't I consulted about this plan involving my property?" "We knew you'd make a fuss," he admitted. "Look, your sister is just starting out. You're established. You can afford to help them." I closed my eyes, fighting a fresh wave of tears. "I've been helping for years, Dad. I've given tens of thousands of dollars to this family. I paid for half of Natalie's wedding. When has it ever been enough?" There was a pause before he answered. "Family takes care of family, Ava. Your mother and I sacrificed everything for you girls." The statement was so divorced from reality that I almost laughed. What exactly did you sacrifice for me, Dad? You didn't pay for my education. You've never supported me emotionally. You missed my college graduation because Natalie had a callback for a commercial she didn't even get. Please tell me what sacrifices you made for me specifically. His stuttering response made it clear he had no examples ready. That's not the point, Ava. The point is you've embarrassed your sister and hurt your mother's feelings. You need to make it right. I realized then that nothing would change. In their eyes, I would always be the one who owed who should give more, who should apologize first. The revelation was both painful and liberating. I'll think about it, I said finally, knowing I would do no such thing. I need some time. After hanging up, I received a voicemail from my mother. Her voice was cold and controlled, nothing like the emotional woman who had slapped me hours before. Ava, your behavior last night was unacceptable. After everything we've done for you, the sacrifices we've made, you owe your sister this happiness. Call me when you're ready to discuss transferring the penthouse. We can keep it quiet if you're concerned about appearances. The message left me physically ill. I rushed to the bathroom and vomited my body, rejecting the toxic dynamic as violently as my mind now did. I spent the rest of the day in bed alternating between rage, grief, and a strange sense of clarity that was slowly emerging from the emotional chaos. I emailed my manager to request a week off citing a family emergency. Then I turned off my phone, drew the blackout curtains, and allowed myself to fully process the lifetime of manipulation that had culminated in last night's events. On day 3 of my self-imposed isolation, I checked social media and immediately regretted it. Natalie had posted a carefully curated version of events, heartbroken that someone I love chose material possessions over family happiness on what should have been the perfect day. True colours always show eventually. The post had hundreds of sympathetic comments, many from wedding guests who had witnessed the confrontation, but somehow reinterpreted it through Natalie's victim narrative. The digital pile-on made me close the app and retreat further into my solitude. On day 5, a knock at my door roused me from the fog of betrayal and hurt. It was Maya carrying takeout from my favourite Thai restaurant and a determination to check on me that wouldn't be deterred by unanswered texts. "You look like hell," she said bluntly, pushing past me into the apartment. "When did you last eat something that wasn't from your freezer?" Maya had been my friend since our first day at Northwestern. Unlike most people in my life, she had no problem calling me out or pushing back when needed. It was precisely what I needed. Over spicy curry and spring rolls, I poured out the full story. Not just the wedding disaster, but the years of imbalanced expectation and emotional manipulation that had preceded it. Maya listened without interruption, her expression growing increasingly concerned. When I finally fell silent, she set down her fork and looked me directly in the eyes. "Ava, I've known your family for over a decade, and I've watched them take advantage of you the entire time. What happened at the wedding wasn't an isolated incident. It was the culmination of a pattern. You need professional help to unpack all of this." She was right, and I knew it. The next day, I called a therapist specializing in family dynamics and childhood trauma, but I also knew therapy alone wouldn't resolve the immediate situation. My family had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. They needed to understand that their actions had consequences. As the fog of emotional distress began to clear, a plan started forming in my mind. Not a plan born of petty revenge, but one designed to create lasting change and establish boundaries that should have existed years ago. If my family wanted financial support from me, they would need to earn it through accountability and changed behavior. I opened my laptop and began making notes, researching options, and contacting professionals who could help me implement what I was beginning to think of as my family intervention. By the end of the week, I had a clear path forward, one that would either transform my family relationships or end them completely. Either way, I would no longer be the ATM they visited whenever they needed funds or the punching bag for their disappointments. It was time for a new dynamic, and I was ready to create it regardless of the cost. Over the next few weeks, I methodically built the foundation for my plan. First, I met with my new therapist, Dr. Winters, who helped me understand the dysfunctional family dynamics I had normalized for decades. "What you're describing is a classic golden child scapegoat dynamic," she explained during our second session. "Your sister was designated as the golden child who could do no wrong while you were the scapegoat, expected to achieve without recognition and give without receiving." This framework helped me understand why my parents' behavior felt so contradictory, pushing me to succeed while simultaneously minimizing my achievements, expecting financial support while treating me as less valuable than my sister. It wasn't logical, but it was a recognizable pattern. Next, I consulted with my financial advisor, bringing years of bank statements documenting transfers to my parents and sister. Together, we calculated that I had given my family over $100,000 in the past 5 years alone, not including wedding expenses. This was in addition to paying off my parents' credit card debt twice and covering Natalie's rent during 3 separate career transitions. This isn't sustainable or healthy, my advisor warned. You're on track for early retirement, but not if you continue supporting multiple households. The third professional I engaged was a lawyer specializing in family law. I needed to understand my options and protections before confronting my family. Based on what you've shared, there's no legal obligation for you to provide financial support to your adult parents or sister, the lawyer confirmed. Any gifts you've given in the past were just that, gifts not obligations. And regarding the penthouse, even if you had verbally promised it, which you didn't, real estate transfers require proper documentation. Armed with this professional guidance, I began investigating my parents' financial situation more thoroughly. What I discovered was alarming. They had taken out a second mortgage on their home to pay for portions of Natalie's wedding. Credit card statements revealed my mother had been hiding significant shopping expenses from my father for years. Their retirement accounts were minimal, suggesting they had been counting on my support in their later years. Natalie's financial situation was equally concerning. Despite the facade of success she presented on social media, she had significant student loan debt from her numerous abandoned degree programs. Her credit score was abysmal, and she had been sued twice by former landlords for unpaid rent. Suits that had mysteriously disappeared, likely settled by my parents. As I pieced together this financial reality, my parents began a campaign to bring me back into the fold. The aggressive demands immediately following the wedding gave way to concerned messages about my well-being. My mother sent emails reminiscing about happy childhood memories that either never happened or had been significantly reimagined in her mind. My father called with casual questions about work, awkwardly avoiding any mention of the wedding incident. Natalie returned from her honeymoon in Bali, which I later discovered had been partially funded by my parents' new home equity line, and called me in tears. "I just don't understand why you had to embarrass me like that," she sobbed. "Everyone was talking about it instead of focusing on me and Robert. It was supposed to be my special day." The lack of self-awareness was staggering. In her mind, the problem wasn't that they had tried to publicly pressure me into giving away my home. It was that I had refused in a way that drew attention from her. I maintained polite but distant contact. Throughout this period, neither confronting them nor giving in to their attempts at reconciliation. I needed time to finalize my approach and strengthen my resolve through therapy. Dr. Winters helped me craft scripts for setting boundaries and prepared me for the guilt, anger, and manipulation that would likely follow. "Remember," she advised, "their reactions will tell you everything about whether real change is possible." After 6 weeks of preparation, I felt ready. I created a detailed spreadsheet documenting every financial contribution I had made to my family over the years, complete with dates, amounts, and stated purposes. I gathered the wedding photographs, including several clear shots of the slapping incident, which had indeed gone viral locally, appearing in Chicago social media, with captions like, "Mother of the bride attacks maid of honor." I prepared a formal presentation outlining my findings about their financial mismanagement and my conditions for any future support. I drafted legal documents with my lawyer that would protect both me and them if they agreed to my terms. Finally, I invited my family to dinner at my penthouse, the very home they had tried to appropriate. I suggested we could clear the air and move forward as a family. Toast 10. They eagerly accepted, likely thinking I had come to my senses and would offer the penthouse after all. I also invited Maya, asking her to serve as both witness and buffer. I had security measures in place, including a doorman who knew to be available if needed, and a recording app running on my phone in case things escalated. The stage was set for a confrontation that would either heal my family or free me from it entirely. Either outcome, I had realized, would be better than continuing in the dysfunctional pattern we had maintained for decades. When my family arrived that evening, smiling and bearing gifts as if nothing had happened, I welcomed them with the calm certainty of someone who finally knew her worth. My family arrived at precisely 7 o'clock, their punctuality a sign of how important they considered this reconciliation dinner. My mother entered first, ear-kissing my cheek as if she hadn't slapped it 6 weeks earlier. She carried a small gift bag and a bouquet of lilies that I was allergic to, a fact she had been reminded of multiple times over the years. "Your home is always so..." Modern, she commented, glancing around the open-concept living area with its floor-to-ceiling windows and minimalist furniture. Her tone suggested modern was synonymous with cold or unwelcoming. My father followed with a bottle of mid-range champagne, the kind he knew I didn't drink. "Place looks good, kiddo," he said, his forced casualness betraying his discomfort. Natalie and Robert entered last. While Robert offered a genuine, if awkward, greeting, Natalie immediately began examining the penthouse as if conducting an inspection. "You changed the kitchen backsplash," she noted. "The marble would have worked better with my design vision." Maya arrived moments later, her presence clearly surprising my family. "I didn't realize this was a group dinner," my mother said with a tight smile. "Maya's practically family," I replied smoothly, "and I thought having a friend here would keep things comfortable for everyone." I had prepared an elegant dinner: filet mignon, roasted vegetables, and truffle mashed potatoes served on my best china. The meal itself was pleasant enough, filled with careful small talk about neutral topics. My mother commented repeatedly on how perfect the space would be for entertaining Robert's business associates. Natalie mentioned at least 3 times how the guest bedroom would make an ideal nursery. "The light in here is amazing," she said, gesturing with her wine glass. "Our apartment gets terrible natural light. The baby would be so happy here." "Are you pregnant?" Maya asked innocently. "Not yet," Natalie admitted. "But we're planning to start trying soon, and this place would be perfect for raising a child." I kept my expression neutral, waiting for the right moment. It came as we finished dessert, a chocolate souffle that my mother praised while mentioning she would have made it differently. "Before we move to coffee, I have a special announcement," I said, standing and moving to the credenza where I had placed my materials. "You all have been hinting about my penthouse all evening, so let's address that directly." My mother's eyes lit up while my father shifted uncomfortably. Natalie actually clapped her hands together like an excited child. "I know you were disappointed by my response at the wedding." I continued setting up my laptop and connecting it to the large television screen on the wall. "But I've had time to reflect on our family dynamics and financial arrangements, and I've come to some conclusions I'd like to share." Rather than the property transfer documents they were clearly expecting, I opened a PowerPoint presentation titled Financial Reality Check. The first slide showed a simple pie chart of my contributions to family expenses over the past decade. As you can see, I've contributed over $200,000 to this family since I graduated college. I explained in the calm, authoritative tone I used for work presentations. This includes direct payments to parents covering Natalie's expenses and most recently wedding costs. My father's face reddened. "Now wait a minute. Ava, there's no need to keep score like this." "I'm not keeping score, Dad. I'm establishing facts," I replied, advancing to the next slide, which showed photographs from the wedding, including a crystal-clear image of my mother's hand connecting with my face. These images went viral in certain Chicago social circles. The Williams' friends have all seen them. My mother gasped. "How dare you keep those horrible pictures?" "I didn't take them, Mom. The photographer you hired did. He was doing his job capturing all the memorable moments of the day." I continued through the presentation, methodically laying out their pattern of financial mismanagement, emotional manipulation, and entitlement. I showed evidence of my parents' second mortgage, my mother's hidden shopping addiction, and the true state of Natalie's finances. "You had no right to investigate us," Natalie cried, tears already forming. "That's private information." "Actually, most of this is public record," I corrected her. "The rest came from documents you left in my home or information you voluntarily shared over the years." By the time I reached the final slide, my mother was seething, my father looked defeated, and Natalie was openly sobbing while Robert stared at the floor. Maya sat quietly occasionally taking notes as we had discussed. My mother stood abruptly. "This is outrageous. You've been tracking us like some kind of stalker. After everything we've done for you." "Hussein." She stepped toward me with her hand raised exactly as I had anticipated. Maya quickly moved between us. "Mrs. Turner, I wouldn't advise that," she said firmly. "Assaulting your daughter once in public was bad enough. Doing it again with a witness present would be unwise." My mother faltered, then rounded on my father. "Are you going to let her talk to us this way, after all our sacrifices?" My father seemed to age before my eyes. "What exactly do you want, Ava?" he asked, ignoring my mother's outburst. "I'm glad you asked," I replied, retrieving a folder from the credenza. "I have a proposal for you, my gift, if you will." I distributed copies of a document titled Family Financial Agreement. "I'm prepared to pay off your second mortgage," I explained as they skimmed the paperwork. This would relieve significant financial pressure and allow you to rebuild your retirement savings. However, there are conditions. The conditions were laid out clearly. 1. My parents would attend financial counselling for a minimum of 1 year, with quarterly reports sent to me showing progress. 2. My mother would attend therapy to address her spending issues and resentment toward me. 3. Natalie would secure and maintain stable employment for at least 1 year before receiving any additional financial support. 4. All future financial requests would be submitted formally in writing with clear repayment terms if applicable. 5. Any violation of these terms would result in immediate termination of financial support. 6. Any public disparagement of me would result in the full financial history being shared with extended family and social connections. This is blackmail, my mother sputtered. No, this is boundary setting, I corrected her. You've spent years treating me like a bank without accountability. That arrangement is no longer available. This new arrangement benefits everyone, but requires changes from all of you. And if we refuse, Natalie challenged, her tears miraculously drying up, then you're free to handle your finances without my input or assistance. I won't interfere, but I also won't provide support. My father was reading the document more carefully than the others. This is actually quite fair, he admitted reluctantly. The mortgage is killing us, and the counselling might be helpful. John, my mother exclaimed. She's treating us like children. No, Diane, he countered wearily. She's treating us like adults who've made poor choices. There's a difference. As they argued among themselves, I added one final element to my plan. There's one more thing you should know, I said, regaining their attention. Regardless of your decision about this agreement, I've already taken action on my own. I pulled up an email on the television screen displaying a confirmation for a substantial donation to a women's scholarship fund at Northwestern University. I've established the Turner Women in STEM Scholarship, I explained. It will help young women like me who are working their way through college without family support. I've funded it with the amount I had set aside for your retirement, Mum and Dad. The scholarship will be in my name alone, not the family name. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother looked as if I had physically struck her. My father seemed torn between anger and a reluctant respect. Natalie appeared genuinely confused, as if the concept of giving money to strangers instead of family was incomprehensible. You would give money to strangers instead of your own sister, she finally asked. I'm investing in young women who will value the opportunity and work hard, just as I did, I replied. It's not about strangers versus family. It's about supporting people who will use the help to build something, not simply consume it. My mother stood gathering her purse. I will not be insulted in this way. Come on, John, Natalie, we're leaving. My father hesitated. The mortgage payment is due next week, Diane. We should think about this. So you're taking her side now, my mother snapped. There are no sides here, Mom, I interjected. Just choices and consequences. My offer stands whenever you're ready to accept it. The door is always open, but the terms won't change. As they filed out, expressions ranging from fury to defeat on their faces, I felt no triumph, only resolution. This wasn't revenge in the traditional sense. It was something more powerful, a reclaiming of my worth and a restructuring of relationships that had been imbalanced for too long. After they left, Maya gave me a long hug. You did it. How do you feel? I considered the question carefully. Lighter, I finally said. Like I've put down a weight I've been carrying my whole life. That night, I slept more peacefully than I had in years, secure in the knowledge that whatever happened next would be on my terms, not theirs. 3 months passed without contact from my family. I used this time to focus on my own healing process, diving deeper into therapy with Dr. Winters, and rediscovering parts of myself that had been suppressed by my family's expectations and demands. I took a ceramics class, something I'd always wanted to try, but had dismissed as impractical. I joined a hiking group that explored trails around Chicago on weekends. I reconnected with college friends who had drifted away during my workaholic years. For perhaps the first time in my adult life, I prioritized my own joy and growth over achievement and obligation. At work, I negotiated a more balanced schedule, reducing my hours from 80 to a more reasonable 50 per week. My performance didn't suffer. If anything, the additional rest and personal fulfillment made me more creative and efficient. I was promoted to Chief Innovation Officer, a role that allowed me to mentor younger team members and shape the company's future direction. As I established this new, healthier life rhythm, I occasionally heard updates about my family through mutual connections. My parents had listed their house for sale, apparently downsizing to address their financial situation. Natalie had taken a job at a friend's boutique, her first consistent employment in years. These changes suggested they were feeling the financial impact of my withdrawal, but were finding ways to adapt. Then, exactly 14 weeks after our confrontation dinner, my father called. His voice was hesitant, lacking the entitled tone that had characterized our interactions for years. "Ava, I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, "about everything you said about our family patterns. I'm not saying you were right about everything, but there's truth in what you presented." I remained silent, allowing him space to continue without prompting or relief. "Your mother and I have been attending financial counseling," he admitted. "It was hard at first having a stranger judge our decisions, but it's been educational. We had no idea how much we'd been mismanaging things." "I'm glad you're getting help, Dad," I said neutrally. "The house is under contract," he continued. "We're moving to a condo that's more appropriate for our actual budget. And your mother..." He hesitated. "She's struggling with the changes, but she's seeing someone. A therapist. It was a condition of the refinancing the bank offered." This was progress I hadn't expected so soon. "How is that going for her?" "Rocky, he admitted. "She's cancelled twice, but the third session seemed to help. She's not ready to talk to you yet, but she's processing things." We spoke for nearly an hour, the longest, most honest conversation we'd had in my adult life. He acknowledged specific instances where they had favoured Natalie or taken my support for granted. While he stopped short of a full apology, his recognition of the patterns was significant. As we were about to hang up, he asked tentatively, "Is your office still open, the one from the agreement?" "Yes," I confirmed. "All of it, including the mortgage assistance, provided the conditions are met." "I'd like to try," he said. "Not just for the financial help, but because I think it might be our only chance to have a real relationship with you going forward." That conversation marked the beginning of a slow, careful reconciliation process. My father became the bridge between me and the rest of the family, attending joint therapy sessions with me while continuing financial counselling with my mother. 2 months later, my mother reached out with a stiff, formal email that nonetheless represented tremendous effort on her part. "I am working to understand my behaviours and their impact," she wrote. "This process is challenging, but the counsellor suggests it is necessary. I would like to meet for coffee when you feel it would be appropriate." Our first meeting was awkward and brief, neither of us quite sure how to interact without our established patterns. But it was civil, and at moments almost warm. When she commented on my new haircut, it was a simple compliment, without the usual backhanded comparison to how it would look on Natalie. Natalie herself was the most resistant to the new family dynamic. She remained convinced that I was being unnecessarily harsh and that my boundaries were a form of punishment. However, economic reality proved a powerful motivator. When she and Robert encountered unexpected tax issues related to their wedding gifts, she swallowed her pride and accepted my terms, finding stable work at a marketing firm that actually utilized her creative talents. 1 year after the wedding incident, I hosted a family dinner at my penthouse. Unlike the confrontation dinner, this one had no hidden agenda, no presentations, no ambushes. It was simply a meal shared by people who were learning with varying degrees of success to relate to each other with honesty and respect. My mother still occasionally slipped into old patterns, making comments about my single status or suggesting Natalie would make better use of my guest room. But now I could address these comments directly, and she would catch herself sometimes even apologizing. My father had transformed the most, embracing the financial education and finding a part-time consulting position that utilized his experience while supplementing their retirement income. He had developed a quiet confidence that allowed him to occasionally disagree with my mother, something I had rarely witnessed in my childhood. Natalie had discovered she actually enjoyed the structure and creative challenges of her marketing job. While she still posted carefully curated versions of her life on social media, the reality behind those posts was more substantial now. As for me, I had found an unexpected calling in mentoring young women in technology. The scholarship I had established brought me into contact with brilliant, driven students who reminded me of myself at their age. I began volunteering as a mentor, then developed a formal program at my company for female interns. This work gave me a sense of purpose beyond career advancement or financial success. I was helping create a supportive environment for young women that I had never had, breaking cycles of undervaluation and unrecognized achievement. My family relationships remain a work in progress. There are still difficult moments, old hurts that resurface, patterns that try to reassert themselves. Perfect resolution exists only in fairy tales, not in real families with decades of complicated history. But the slap that echoed through a wedding ballroom ultimately led to something valuable, a dismantling of toxic patterns and the painful necessary growth that followed. My mother's hand against my cheek became the catalyst for change that mere conversations could never have achieved. The revenge I chose wasn't about hurting my family as they had hurt me. It was about creating a new reality where I was valued appropriately, where support came with accountability, and where generations of unhealthy dynamics could finally begin to heal. Sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't about getting even. It's about getting free. Free to establish boundaries, free to define your worth, free to help others avoid the struggles you endured. That freedom hard-won through confrontation and courage is a form of success no one can take from your penthouse or your heart. Have you ever had to stand up to family members who felt entitled to what you've worked for? How did you handle setting boundaries with loved ones who crossed the line? Share your story in the comments below. If this video resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding your voice and standing your ground. Don't forget to share with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to say no, even to family. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, you deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor without guilt or manipulation.